Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Press for Presence. Today, we've got an exciting one. This is our, per tradition, every 10 episode solo podcast. And this one timed up at a really cool time of year. It is the holidays and the end of the year, and there's just a lot coming to a head today, and I'm really excited to be doing this. This is going to be an interesting format today. We've done a handful of these solo episodes where we've done like a solo Q&A thing where I'll put something up on my story and send some text out to friends and family and ask for some questions to talk about. And the last one was kind of cool because we did that with a mix of having some different things from my journal and some stuff like that in there. And so those have been really fun. This one, however, is going to be the first solo podcast that we do that's like a year in review sort of thing. Some of my favorite podcasters have done these, and I've been able to take a lot from those. But I was kind of battling with the idea, to be honest, at first. I was talking to my videographer, Rowan, just kind of spitballing what this episode should be about and how it should be structured. And I kind of wanted to do something interesting for it. And I was telling him about how I kind of was thinking about doing a listicle type of thing where we did, maybe 25 lessons from 2025 and blah, blah, blah. And I tend to be very heady when it comes to the things that I think people find value in. I'm like always trying to explain things. I always think there needs to be a quote or a book or a passage or some kind of thing to anchor an idea with. And then that, my tendency is just to get super into that idea and blow it out of, maybe not out of proportion, but like to really analyze it. And that's probably what that episode would have turned into. But as I was talking to Rowan, he's like, dude, that is cool and everything like that. But to be honest, I think people take more from stories sometimes. And so often when you have people on the podcast, you get to hear their story and you do a good job of bringing that out, but you don't really talk a whole lot. So I feel like people might enjoy you as an interviewer, but they might not get enough of like who you are as a person. And that might be something that's interesting or helpful to somebody. And so I got to thinking about it, and I think that he's right. There was a story that Chris Griffin told on one of his buddies' podcasts, and I heard this probably a year and a half ago. And he's somebody who I look up to a lot in the podcasting world. He's a couple years younger than me, and his podcast, The Pocket, has just absolutely blown up this year. But even prior to that, he knew that this was his calling, and he went absolutely all in on it. To the point where he had lived at his parents' house for about a year and ran up a ton of money on credit cards, just trying to live as modestly as possible, but spending every dollar that he had on the podcast. And he was telling his friend Dean how at Christmas that year, he didn't have any money to buy anybody in his family a present. And he talks about how since he didn't, he did his very best to write everybody in his family a very meaningful letter, thanking them essentially for what they provided in his life. And he talks about this and he's just like in full tears. And it gets me just thinking about it because he was so committed to this thing. And he is writing to these letters to his parents. And he's like, Dad, I'm so sorry that I can't get you a gift this year, but I want to tell you, thank you for believing in me and for giving me this platform to try and pursue my dream and for letting me live at home and do all these things. Like, I'm sorry it's not working right now, but I'm like, just trust me, it's going to work. And like, essentially just saying thank you for the support and telling them to believe in him still. When he talks about that story, it's so impactful for me because he looks at it from the other side and he goes, it's moments like that I know that I fucking deserve this. Like I was willing to be so down bad that I couldn't get the people I cared about presents and, just went all in on this thing. And that story to me is so impactful because a lot of the things that he's done are very much in line with what I want to do with the podcast. And this is my passion project, and it's the best thing I feel like I can give to the world. And so that's an example of something where, he could have talked about the value of hard work and the value of, being willing to go all in and dropped a couple of cool quotes. And it probably, maybe it would have stuck, but it wouldn't have been the same because I just like, man, especially with the holidays this week, I really think about I really think about him just sitting there and like what mental state he must have been in writing those letters and what it must have been like just being able to give those to his family. And so, yeah, I don't know. I can't promise that any of the things that I'm going to talk about today are that impactful, but I'm going to do my very best to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and talk about some of my stories over the last year. It's a very unfamiliar format to me. One of the beauties about podcasting is I actually really, really enjoy being an interviewer. I like trying to bring out the best in people. I'm very just genuinely curious in people's stories. And I absolutely love being in the seat where I just get to be curious. And these episodes are tricky for me because the reality of the situation, although you're listening to this right now, is I am sitting in the studio that I built and it's just me. And I'm staring into one camera right in front of me and another camera that's slightly off to my left. And it's weird because when you're talking to somebody in person, you get to run all the way to the end of an idea and kind of like not have much else to say about it and hit what do you think? Or you get to, bounce an idea off of somebody or just let the silence be. But in these solo podcasts, especially without having a Q&A, it's a lot of just looking into the lifeless lens of a camera and yapping about stuff. So I'm going to do my very best here, and I'm excited about it. So the one note that I have for myself, and I've got it at the top of my little note sheet here, just a little bit of inside baseball, is the note that I left myself is feelings over facts. I tend when I'm talking about myself or if I'm, journaling about a new year or something like that, I tend to write down names, dates, places, and just kind of, paint the timeline for how something happens. But I think that what's a lot more interesting when I'm listening to other people's stories is less about the details and more about like, how are you feeling when you had to write these letters to your parents? And, what does it feel like now that you look back on that? And when you guys talk about that Christmas, what's it like? And I think I'm just, that's my note for myself, is just to try to lean a little bit more into feelings and not be as much of a historian with some of these. So anyways, let's get into it. To be completely transparent, this has been the hardest year of my life for sure. I have learned more about myself and about the world and about the people that I care about this year than I know that I ever have in my entire life. And it has been a blessing in a lot of very challenging ways, for sure. I usually take the time each year to journal on the previous year and just kind of do a little bit of a reflection. There's been a handful of years that's been my only journal entry, actually. And it's been very helpful for me to have kind of like a thing locked in time where I can look back and say, oh, that's the year that I traveled for work for the first time and went to Boston and Paris and got to go to Europe. And then this is the year that I got to start my business and this is what I was feeling and blah, blah, blah. And it's been really cool to look back at a lot of times, but this is the first time that I've been able to put it on video or really even just like talk out loud about it. And it was a really cool exercise being able to go back into my journal and read a lot of the things that I had written over the year. This is easily the most I've ever journaled in an entire year. And I did a good job of getting outside of that names, dates, and places thing. And it was really cool figuring out some of the lessons that I had learned and some of the progressions and stuff like that happened. So I'm excited to share some of those for this year. And I'm also very excited that much like this journal entry, whether it's, myself or the people that I care about, looking back on it, this will be a cool little time capsule for whenever down the road this will be cool to listen to. So whether that's a year from now or 5 years from now, hopefully the show will have a little bit more eyeballs on it and it'll be really cool to check out. So that being said, the thing that kind of kicked off really the entire, I would say kind of set the tone for this year was a breakup that happened last year. I was in a 5-year relationship that had a lot of really beautiful things about it. And in a lot of ways, I got in my own way and made a lot of mistakes that ended that relationship. And it sent me down quite the spiral. maybe a spiral isn't the right word, but maybe like a journey of reflection. But last November, there was a day where my GM in my business, so the person that I kind of counted on the most to run most of the day-to-day and things like that, who had been with me for essentially since like almost the start of the business, she took a new job, and we had a lunch that day to talk about some of the things that she enjoyed about the company. I wanted to thank her, get some of her ideas for things she would have changed or going forward, just very typical exit interview stuff. And it was heavy because she was such a key part of so much of what we had built at the time. It was hard to let go for sure. And it was a big transition. I was having to step into that role while we looked for somebody to fill it. And it was a bit overwhelming in some ways for sure. But anyways, I got home from that lunch, and that is when the breakup happened as well. And so in the matter of about 2 hours, I had a really tough time with the fact that I had just lost the person that I counted on the most in my business and the person that I counted on the most in my personal life. And there was a lot of things that really just kind of like lifted the veil on. And it was a bit of an ego death, to be completely honest. I think up to that point, there was a lot of things that I was just blind to in my life. And that was certainly a way to rip the curtains off and see a lot of what I was missing. So during that time, it was heavy, man. I remember getting on a Zoom call with my team after that weekend was over on Monday, and we were just doing a regular team meeting. And as part of our team meetings each day, I really care. I really believe in my business that people will perform the best inside of their business, inside of their lives, if their basic like human needs are cared for first. And so even in our meetings, I want to know, we've got a place for like gratitudes and then personal news. And part of that personal news is anything that's going on in somebody's life that's good, bad, or otherwise that might affect something about their work that people should know. So some people are like, hey, I've got a travel thing coming up, so I won't be here. Sometimes it's I'm having a surgery, or sometimes it's, hey, I've got an anniversary coming up or a birthday or whatever. But this one for me this time was really heavy because I remember getting on the Zoom call and just asking for some grace. And I don't tend to be a very emotional person in front of my team, especially when the emotions aren't something, like getting excited about something. And I just remember kind of breaking down in front of everybody and just kind of, letting out a couple thug tears and telling them like, guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to need a little bit of grace because I am hurting right now. And over the course of that weekend, it felt like I had a big decision to make. And I'm telling the story to kind of set the tone for this year. But over the course of that weekend, I felt all of the heaviness of everything that had just happened. I was overwhelmed by the things that I had to do in my business, as far as doing my previous role, plus, kind of filling in that day-to-day role a little bit more than I was. And then obviously the heaviness of like having, a 5-year relationship end. And at that time, I felt like shit. I felt like a failure in my business in some ways. I felt like a failure in my personal life. And I was immediately confronted with a lot of the places that I've been dropping the ball in my relationship and my friendships and my family and a lot of those different places. And at that time, it just felt crippling, honestly. I just remember like staring at the ceiling being like, it just felt so heavy to build anything off of this foundation. And at that time, I realized how easy it would be to screw essentially my whole life up. And I had this weird thought where I was feeling so down bad and I could feel that I just wanted to run from it. As soon as that thought arrived, I thought about the homeless people and the people who end up in jail and the people that a lot of times society looks down on when they say stuff like, oh man, it was just one bad decision, or it was just one mistake, or, I was a good person, I just fucked up one time and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm homeless, or now I'm in jail for life, or now I'm whatever. And I used to roll my eyes at that a bit because it's like, yeah, sure, dude, I'm sure that's the case. And it's not that, you set yourself up, you put yourself in this position, you acted this way, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, I had a lot of compassion for that because I felt in that moment how bad running away from the situation that I was in and trying to drown it out or trying to escape it could fuck my life up. And it felt at that time like I was so close to doing that. I realized that if I went out to the bars and tried, escaping and, drinking with my friends, I saw all the ways that that could go bad. I saw that if I was drunk and somebody looked at me, talked to me the wrong way while I was in that headspace, and I decided to fight them, it happens all the time when somebody gets knocked out and they hit their head on the pavement and that person dies. So gone forever, like definitely in jail for that. There's DUIs, there's hurting myself or somebody else driving. There's so many versions of that. And then, running towards shallow hookups could be, getting somebody pregnant and, messing up your life that way. And I just felt how close all of that could be. It literally felt like it was just on the doorstep. Like if I picked up the phone and texted the wrong person, or if I went out to the wrong place, that it was just like bound to be terrible. So in that moment, I decided, I was like, no, I can't do that, man. I got to feel this and I just got to sit in it. And I realized, I was like, okay, well, if everything negative is that close, if it's that close that it's knocking on my doorstep that I could screw up everything in my life, then on the other side of that coin, it also has to be just as close for me to turn this into something where I become the person that I want to be. And so in that moment, I made that decision. And that decision really set the tone for the rest of this year. And I'm very proud of a lot of the times that I went through really difficult shit. And I made that exact same decision over and over again, where I did not go the route of self-destruction or sabotage or trying to run away. I felt things heavier this year than I ever have, and started to be okay with having emotions and not just, shoving everything down and keeping it pushing. And as a part of how I decided to make this a good thing, I put a couple of guardrails up in my life to kind of keep me on track. So the first chapter of this year is a chapter that I titled Personal Development. And I, for the first time in my life, titled the chapters of my life, and it's been very helpful. Each of these different seasons I've gone into, it's been really helpful to set an intention without really knowing when the end of a chapter is going to be, but having an intention to say, okay, this is what this part of my life is going to be about. And when I made that decision to try and have this painful thing that I went through and that I created for myself be the moment where I looked myself in the face and said, hey, dude, now's the time to become the person we want to be. It was helpful to title that chapter Personal Development, because I was like, all right, dude, here we go. This is what we're going to focus on, and it's going to be the main thing. So as a part of that chapter, the first thing that I did was I started going to therapy. And going to therapy for me was something that I had had a bit of I was kind of buying into the stigma of therapy for a really long time when I was growing up. And I thought that therapy, was kind of for the weak in some ways, or it was for the people who were very damaged or had very big traumas and that kind of thing. And I was like, I don't really have that. And so, boy, was I wrong, first of all. I decided to go to therapy, and I think I got really lucky with how that went for me. My therapist, Summer, was on the podcast a handful of episodes ago, and I'm just super blessed for the role that she's played in my life and for how she's kept me on track for so much of this stuff. I had first gone to therapy with her as a business experiment. I built a website for her, and long story short, didn't really know what she did. The thing that I love about Summer so much is she has like a million different modalities and certifications and things that she can kind of loop in to make the therapy experience very helpful. And so that was how I started with therapy. Was I was building a website for Summer, and I was like, dude, I don't know how to describe all of these things that you do. So let's do a couple of different sessions, and we'll do each of these different modalities, and I'll be your patient, if you will. And once I have these experiences, then I'll be able to write about them more clearly because I will have experienced them. Leave it to me to go to therapy for the first time as a business case. But that was about 1.5 years before I started actually working with Summer in clinic. And I was very lucky because I had some profound experiences during that time that I was doing that research project, if you will. And I was so blessed that as soon as I decided, nope, I'm going to go to therapy, I'm going to get somebody's help with keeping me on track and with making sure that this turns into a good thing, that I'd already had somebody who was somebody that I trusted and somebody who I believed in. So I started going to her, and what I decided in that moment was that I needed to slow down. So much of my life before that was just the like Alex Hermosi, David Goggins pilled, like, who's going to carry the boats, work hard. If you just go hard long enough, everything will take care of itself, and shove your feelings down and just keep it pushing. And I ran that program for a long time, man. To the point where everybody living with me probably heard just a constant echo of Alex Hermosi coming from whatever room I was in. Poor fellas. And I did it, man. I was 75 hard a handful of times. I was working to the bone. I was just doing all of this stuff. And I think that that's important. I think it's an important experience, but that is the thing that in a lot of ways got in the way of what actually mattered to me. And there was an analogy that popped into my head early when I was working with Summer that for me kind of was a helpful visual during this entire chapter. And that visual was jet skiing versus scuba diving. And when you're jet skiing, this was a super helpful visual for me because when you're jet skiing, you're on the jet ski. And if you're really ripping it, you are flying across the water. You've got the thing like fully pinned. The tears are kind of flying out of your eyes and the wind's whipping and you can't really hear anything. And it's just like, holy fuck, let's go. And it's fun. It's really fun. And it's a huge rush. You're hauling ass, and it's a really good place to get from point A to point B. That being said, it's really good for when you decide that there's a place that you want to go and you want to get there really fast and have a rush of an experience on the way there. It's not real good for feeling anything because you don't really have a whole lot of time to look around and enjoy the scenery. You don't really have a whole lot of time to like feel what you're doing because you're kind of just skipping across the water and not really like, it doesn't even feel like you're on water anymore. And if you turn too fast or you make too quick of a decision, it kind of like the whole thing falls apart. You go flying off the jet ski and it's a bit of a shit show. That's how I ran my life for a long time. For the majority of the first handful of years of my business, I was going at full clip, and destination A was, holy shit, we're taking a chance on ourselves and we have just a little bit of money and a couple of clients and we're going to give this thing a go. And destination B was almost always money goals. It was, how can I get to this much per month and that much per month? And much can I save and how much can I do this and that? And that's pretty much all I was focused on. There wasn't a whole lot of looking around and seeing the sights. There wasn't a whole lot of feeling anything. There honestly wasn't even a whole lot of like room for changing direction because I was so set on what I was doing. And I thought about that and I contrasted that with scuba diving. And what scuba diving feels like is calm. It's like as soon as you go under the surface, it's quiet and it's beautiful. And you've got like this very slow sense of motion where when you like kick one of your fins once, your whole body moves. And if you like, move your arms once, you can like steer your direction with every little movement that you take. And even your breath, if you've got your buoyancy correct, like your breath, when you breathe in, you start to float towards the surface. And when you breathe out, you start to sink a bit. And that is such a different experience than the jet ski thing because you've got time to look around. When you make small movements, you feel it and you can like, it feels like a very immersive experience where you're doing everything on purpose. And that visual was super helpful for me because I feel like a lot of the things that I was blind to and a lot of the mistakes that I was making was because I was living life like I was on a jet ski and not like I was scuba diving. I was just so focused on the one thing that I couldn't see all of the things in my peripheral that were flying by me. And I wasn't interested in doing anything besides just pinning it. And I wanted to take the time to scuba dive and actually be immersed in the experience of my life and look around at the different things, at my friendships, at my relationship with work, at my shortcomings in relationships and what I wanted in relationships, and just like just kind of reassess everything that I had going on and move slow and on purpose during this time. And one of the things that I found as I was trying to go into that scuba diving thing is a saying that I think I said it on accident at one point during a podcast with Drew. But it's really been heavy for me this year. So the thing that was the most helpful for me in that time to realize was that hard work can't be the only thing that you're working hard at. And when I was on that jet ski, that's exactly what the thing was. Like, I was like, okay, well, you're supposed to get your lift in super early, and then you're supposed to work really hard, and you're kind of supposed to ignore social things, and you're supposed to say no to socializing, and you're supposed to say no to drinking and traveling, doing all of these things, because if you just work really hard in your 20s, you'll be set in your 30s. And I really took that to heart. I worked really hard at the things that were considered hard work. A lot of times you can measure those. Like, you can measure when you work really hard and your monthly income goes up. You can measure when you work really hard and land a new client, or when you are able to hire somebody. And a lot of the things tied to that hard work are very tangible. What I didn't realize until after this breakup is that there's so many other things that also require hard work. Like, especially for people who are business minded, it's hard work to slow down and like leave work at work. It's hard work to come home to a partner and actually be present and be invested in how their day was and invested in the conversations you have, and like make that experience just as intentional as what you're doing at work. It's hard work creating time for your friends and family. It's hard work being present while you're there. Like, it's hard work taking care of your health in some ways. Like, there's so many other things that are not necessarily easy that require our attention. And for me, I was going so hard on the hard work, and I was skipping like making dinner with my partner so I can get an extra hour of work in. And I was skipping hanging out with friends because I just imagined that they would be like, oh, Drew's busy. He's working hard. He's a business owner. Like, it's cool. He's gone. Like, whatever. When I was like hanging out with people, I had this sense of, I was just dropping in. Like, I was kind of like checking the box. And for me, my perception was that people would think it was enough if I just like showed up. And the fact that I was just so busy all the time, it was like, oh, wow, like, this is nice. He made the time to be here. But so often I'd already be thinking about like, okay, once I get home, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get this business shit done. And it was tough, man. I was not as good of a friend as I should have been during that period. I wasn't as good of a son and a brother and a partner, and so many different things that actually mattered to me. And so that became a very big mantra for me over the course of that chapter, and really over the course of this year, is don't let hard work be the only thing that you're working hard at. And I think that chapter, I did a good job of that. I set a rule for myself where every day I would either call or spend time with somebody that I loved whenever possible. So what that turned into was, if I had something scheduled where I got to get coffee with a friend, or go hang out, or do something in person with somebody I loved, great. That was like my one thing for the day. But if nothing was scheduled, then I would call somebody in my family, I would call a friend, and like I would connect with somebody. And it didn't matter if it was just like, hey, just thinking about you, just checking in, what's up? Or if it was bigger than that. But every day I had to do that, because that was one of the things that I was dropping the ball on when it came to like putting the time and effort into the things that weren't just my work. So that was a very helpful tool for me during that time. And it's something that I've actually continued doing since that time. And it's one of the biggest game changers of my entire life. So that was super, super helpful for me. And there was a quote from Oliver Berkman that was also super helpful in like reinforcing this idea of slowing down and like focusing on the person that I wanted to be and not just the thing that I wanted to build. And it came down to busyness, which again, that just flying through life, jet ski analogy. It's like, that's what it feels like when it's such a busy calendar. It feels like scrambling and this meeting into that meeting, into this to do, into that to do, into this report, and so much shit. And what Oliver Berkman says is he says, busyness serves as a kind of existential hedge against emptiness. Obviously, your life cannot possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if you are so busy, completely booked, and in demand on every hour of the day. And I think it's so funny because it's like just this tongue-in-cheek commentary on, oh, you must be so busy and so important and people must need you so much and you just must be the shit if your calendar's full all the time. And that's what I was feeling. It's like, oh, well, I must be important and I'm this business guy and I'm this and that if I'm busy all the time. If I've always got a goal that I'm chasing and a project I'm working on and blah, 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 blah. And in some ways, I think that I confused meaning with busyness and my self-worth with busyness and whether or not I was doing anything with my life, with how busy my calendar was. And that was a really important thing for me to unwind because some of my most important lessons that even made me start a business in the first place were that I didn't have to be so fucking busy. Like when I worked at this marketing agency when I was in college, I spent an entire summer just putting in time. The guy that I was working for at the time essentially told me, he's like, dude, if you want to get paid like a partner, you need to put in partner level effort at this company. And he's like, you show up, you do your 8 hours and then you dip and that's pretty much it. Or in my head, I was like, dude, I also have an hour commute. So I'm putting in my 10 hours and I'm also working out at 4:45 in the morning and don't have time to do anything when I get home and blah, blah, blah. But like, okay, I'll put the time in, I'll do the thing. And what I realized after a summer of skipping like everything with my friends and being fucking gassed every day I got home and working like, 12 plus hours per day plus weekends, hoping to get this approval of this dude who like at the end of this was maybe going to give me a bonus for this, like this time and effort that I put in. I got to the end of this period and after working to the bone, I went on this trip to Europe. That was a work trip. And while I was there, I wanted so bad to enjoy this experience while I was working remote that I would just hyper focus when I was sitting at coffee shops getting my work done. And what I found is that most of the like time that I was putting in at this marketing agency when I was just like sitting there grinding away, it wasn't about what I was actually getting done. It was more about like the time that I was spending. And so what I was taking 12 hours to do when I was like, well, tomorrow's going to be the same. I got to be here 12 hours either way and blah, 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 was so possible to get done in like 3 hours when I was motivated. And so what I realized at that time was I was like, holy shit, if I just took 3 hours and worked on my own thing, or if I took 8 hours and focused on my own business, how far could I be? And could I create a life that's like this, where I get to travel and experience life and do all these cool things? And it was just this giant epiphany because I was, I was motivated. I wanted to go to cool restaurants, hang out at coffee shops and do all that stuff. And that was a very pivotal moment for me to be like, okay, dude, if I just am efficient about my work, look at how much I can get done. Look at the life that I can live instead of just being stuck in an office all day. So anyways, I think that I had forgotten that lesson over the course of a couple of years. And in these stages of my business, I was just flying and I was like, okay, well, if I'm busy. But really, like there's this quote that goes, it's not enough to be busy. So are the ants. The question is, what are we so busy about? And I was not busy about the things that mattered at that time. So, that being said, I think that the combination of just like making time in my calendar for the people that mattered to me and for training and for lifting and for the things that kind of make me feel like a human was very important to me at this time. And it felt so good. Um, Speaking of being busy, one of the other things that I did during this time was, just like therapy, I set up another guardrail where I took a boxing fight. And the time that I decided to do the fight, I think I had about a 4-month camp that I could put together at the time. And the reason that I did it was because I knew that I needed something to be working towards. And taking a fight checked a lot of boxes all at once. I took a fight in March of this year, beat the guy. And I knew that putting together that training camp would very much keep me on the right path in a lot of ways. I knew that, I walk around at about 205 to 210 pounds and I fight at 185 pounds. So I knew that having an upcoming weight cut and all that stuff, that I would be eating well. Very importantly, I wouldn't be drinking. I wouldn't be going out and doing those sorts of things. And then socially, some of my best friends are also boxers and compete in jiu-jitsu and MMA. And so socially, I knew that if I was in fight camp, then at least 6 times a week, I would be able to see my people, whether it was my coach Drew during a privates or getting to see Will, my head coach, and be able to do some work with him and talk after, or see all my buddies and my training partners. Like, it was just so good for me at that time because I also had a home office where, I didn't have to leave the house if I didn't want to. So between the social aspect of being able to see all my homies, the guardrail physically of not wanting to drink or put anything in my body that was stupid, and then also just having something to work towards was all very important for me at that time, to kind of give myself something to work towards and I don't know, maybe even just gamify self-development a little bit. So that chapter was super impactful for me. And another thing that I started working on during all of that was part of me becoming the best person that I wanted to be, was also a very real conversation with myself about what I want to do with my life. And to be completely honest, this podcast is the thing. Obviously right now it might sound a little goofy to say because there's, I think at the time of this recording, less than 800 followers on Instagram on this thing. I think we've got 100 subscribers on YouTube, 100 on Spotify, and it's a small show and it's a freaking incredible community, and the size doesn't take away from that at all. But that being said, having an audience that small right now makes it pretty much impossible to monetize it and make a living off of this thing. So just like I was making a bet on myself to put up all these guardrails and turn this hard chapter into a good thing for me, I also did the same thing when it came to the podcast. I was coming to the close of the owner's journal, which I did with Clay. And at that time I was like, dude, I got to go pro for this thing. And so we got the studio that we're in right now. If you're watching video, obviously you can see some of it, and audio. It's it's a cool spot. But we got the studio and it was real ugly when we got it. It was these puke yellow orange walls and these burnt orange trim, and just it's kind of gross, old nasty carpets. So we came in and tried to make it as cool as we could, tried to make it a relaxing feeling space where we could spend a lot of time and do all of that. And it was a big bet on myself. And at that time, it felt like everything was rolling, because a couple months, we get into January, February, March, therapy had started going well. And I was really diving into some of the things that were making me feel proud of myself again, because I was changing a lot of my patterns and I was learning things about myself and starting to live like the person I wanted to be. I was connecting with people. I was getting to a point where, we had hired somebody in the business to fill that role that the GM had left. And it felt like things were getting back on track. And I was so, so excited. We were booking lots of podcast episodes. I was able to travel to Sheridan and Boise, to go meet with some people that I'd always wanted to do podcasts with. And it felt like things were rolling. And I was just so excited about it, because it felt like I was having some wins where the pain that I went through, and like actually sitting in those moments and deciding to like feel it, analyze it and understand it for myself, and then turn it into a good thing, it felt like that was actually becoming worth it. And that it was the right decision not to just shove it down and keep it pushing and only focus on the business and drown out the feelings and all that stuff. And so I felt great about it. Starting to get really excited about the podcast. The business was doing pretty good at the time, and I was kind of getting back into that role where I wasn't as much in the day to day, so I could focus on some different stuff. And I was stoked. I felt like things were rolling. And that chapter came to a bit of an abrupt end, to be completely honest, which brings us into our next chapter, chapter 2, professional development. And so that first one of personal development, I was probably from realistically probably last November to like early March or so. And it was 4 months of just lots of boxing training and lots of therapy and lots of journaling and self-work, and just honestly kind of just having my head down and just doing the dang thing. And I was very excited about it. And like I said, I felt like things were finally getting back on track. I was starting to feel a little bit more self-love. I was starting to feel a little bit of reward from my business and feeling very fulfilled in the podcast. And right around the time that all of that happened, I got a 2-week notice from the GM that I was working with. And maybe it was the straw in the camel's back in some ways, but it fucking crushed me. And the funniest thing about these chapters is I don't really know when the page is going to turn a lot of times. And at this point, I was so excited about how everything was going and how the business was rolling and the people that were on our team and, the way that the podcast was going and the amount of time I was able to give to it. And I got that 2-week notice, and it just absolutely hammered me. And I think looking back on it, the reason why is because I was feeling like I was finally accomplishing what I had set out to accomplish. I was finally not just focusing on the hard work. I was doing good work in my professional life. I was doing good work in my personal life. And it felt like I was like kind of finding a flow a little bit. And when this GM quit, which it wasn't, anything bad. She was having a baby, which I was so excited for them for. And, her and her husband are good friends of mine. I absolutely think the world of them. It just felt crushing to me. And it felt crushing because things were going so good. And it wasn't that things were bad in the business or the role sucked or anything like that. It was just like, dude, you got to go be a mom. I get it. But at that time, when she told me that, it felt like everything that I had worked for had kind of gotten set back to zero, which wasn't necessarily true looking back on it, but I just felt fucked, man, because since she left, that means, okay, dude, well, now you got to go all in on the business again and like be very involved in the day to day and all of that kind of stuff. And that's the first domino. And the domino that falls after that is that means that you're not going to have nearly as much time for the podcast. And the domino that falls after that felt like, okay, well, if you don't have time for the podcast, then like that's the thing that is the most fulfilling to you. So what's going to happen with training for boxing, and what's going to happen with journaling and some of the self-work that you're doing? Like, we're not going to have that much time, dude. We might be getting back into this jet ski thing where it becomes all about the business and all about just, setting the course straight. And at that same time, while I'm going through all of these emotions of like, fuck, man, I don't want to go back into just being the business guy anymore. During that professional development or that personal development season, I'd also spent a shit ton of money doing all this. Like, therapy was very expensive. Putting together this studio and essentially revamping the entire thing was very expensive. Doing the furniture and the lighting and the cameras and the fucking rugs and the crazy cool table and the office and the studio and all the stuff. And at the same time, we had taken, multiple day trips to Sheridan and flew down to Boise with a videographer. And like, I was going all in on this stuff. And between spending and investing the money and doing all of that and losing one or two clients, which always happens in Q1 when people are looking at their social media budgets, at the same time that I got that 2 weeks and all of these emotions come in and it feels like, fuck, I got to go back into being the business guy. While all of that happened, I had about the same amount of number in my business checking account as I had on credit card bills for the business. Everything in me during this time, I remember going over to, for those of you who know Billings, I went over to the nature conservation area over by Shields on the west end. And I was sitting there just looking over this pond and just being just feeling like all of the work that I'd done was about to get reset, that I was going to have to be this business guy again. I felt just like I didn't want to do it. I was 3 years into business at this point, and I had never wanted to quit so bad. And at the same time, I was looking at it. I'm like, dude, we are 3 years in right now. How the hell are we at this point? I spent so much time in year 1 hustling my ass off, and in year 2 and in year 3. And I'm like, really, man, this is what we have to show for it? It's like being down bad, being effectively, net broke, and having to dive all the way back in your business to fix it again. Like, what the fuck have we been doing for the last 3 years? So I was so disappointed in myself, and I just wanted to run. I have never wanted to quit that bad. I was just like, man, fuck solving this thing. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go back into, screwing my life up and only focusing on business and not, having good relationships and not having all of this stuff. And man, I've ran this grind program where it's only that before, and I just don't want to do it again. And at that time, I just remember I was like, man, I just wanted to quit. I remember I had this thought. I was sitting there looking over the water, and I'm like, man, the roads are getting dry. Could buy a motorcycle. I could buy a motorcycle. I could leave with the little bit of money that I have, my savings. I could pay off the credit card, take the, business account to zero, fucking write a letter, saying sorry, and fucking hit the road, man. And, yeah, my thought at that time was that, one of those rides on that motorcycle that I was going to buy was going to be the last one. But I think in that moment, it felt like another version of what I was feeling during that breakup, where I was like, man, this is another one of those things where that decision would just that would throw everything off course for sure. It'd literally be the end of the course. And there was something about it, man, where I was like, man, there are so many people who are counting on me right now. My clients are counting on me. The people in my business are counting on me. I've done all this work to get back in connection with my friends and with my family. And man, I just love so much of life when life's going good. And I was like, the fact that this is just going to be a hard thing doesn't mean that it's not worth solving. And buying the motorcycle would have just been running from the thing again. It wouldn't have been feeling it. It wouldn't have been turning it into a good thing. It just would have been just another version of cope, another version of running away and trying to shove the feelings down, or just remove them. And so I decided in that moment, I was like, all right, man, in football, we had this thing called the 24-hour rule. And the 24-hour rule was that if you won a game and absolutely kicked somebody's ass, or if you lost a game and you were so down bad, you had 24 hours and you could feel it for 24 hours. You could be riding on cloud 9 and be stoked and think, you're the man and your team's the shit and all that. Or you could be just fully down in the dumps for 24 hours and just all pissed off and sad and that whole thing. But as soon as 24 hours were up, it was on to the next opponent. It was on to the next thing. So I got up from looking over that pond and I was like, all right, man, 24-hour rule. We're going to feel all the things that suck about this. We're going to feel the fact that I'm going to have to get back into the business, and then it's going to be tricky navigating, navigating, like remembering to be a person and not regressing on all of this work. It's going to be hard digging out of this financial hole. It's going to like just feeling all of the stuff, feeling all the feels. I was like, tomorrow we get up and we're going to make a plan. We're going to get this shit rolling. And so that's what I did. And at that time, it was a really weird time for me to be having all of this, because a couple of days after that moment at that pond, I had a trip scheduled to go to Belize. And I asked the GM who was leaving at the time, I was like, I really feel like I need this trip. I feel like I need to get away from everything, like far enough where I can start to like see things from a 30,000 foot view and not feel so like in the muck with it and feel all of the things. And so I was like, if you could please just like give me that week so that I can leave and just hold it down for me. Like we'll do all of the work. So pretty much all you have to do is answer the phone if something's on fire. I was like, I would really, really, really appreciate that. And she was so graceful in giving me that opportunity. So I did it. And I went to Belize hoping for some clarity and hoping for some direction and not really knowing where I was going to get it or what the question I was even trying to answer was. And on that trip, I was going for a friend's bachelor party, and my buddy Kobe owns a catamaran that we took from San Pedro Island, Belize, all the way down to like almost the southern tip of Belize. And we kind of island hopped and, did some snorkeling and scuba diving and, fishing and hung out on some islands and all, all the stuff. It was really fun. But also with being out in the middle of the ocean, like it is a very good place to have no inputs and to just be thinking about shit, which might be one of the biggest things I needed at the time. One morning I was laying on the front of the boat, just kind of like staring up at the sail and maybe admittedly feeling a little bit bad about myself. And it hit me at once. I was like, okay, it's March right now. In 1 year, we need to have a solid foundation in this business. And I realized at that time that I was trying to exercise freedom that I didn't really have in my business before that. I was trying to hire these GMs and put them in a situation where they could run the day-to-day and they could kind of handle everything so that I could bug out and do the podcast, or so I could have as minimal role as possible and like do some sales and make sure everything was sorted and like, be somewhat involved in some of the stuff. But like I was trying to do like 20-year entrepreneur shit in like year 3, which just doesn't make sense. What I realized at that time was if I just took that year to actually build a solid foundation and actually put myself in a position and my team in a position where we were rolling, that I could go do things with the podcast. I could find that balance. I could not end up in this situation where I have to like constantly be in this cycle of, getting close enough to being able to focus on some other stuff and then being ripped right back into the business and having to go jet ski mode again. And that cycle had repeated a couple times and it just sucked. So I realized at that time, I was like, okay, 1 year it is. And that'll give me just so many different opportunities to make decisions. And at that time, I also had a thought about, trying to essentially exit the org chart way too early. It's a crazy thing for a 25-year-old to be thinking about. But I had a thought, I was like, that became one of my mantras. And that mantra was, it's not freedom if you have to neglect something to get it. And what I was trying to do was have this freedom of travel and this freedom of not being in the day-to-day of the business and all of these things. But what I was neglecting is, dude, it's not big enough yet. You're not good enough yet. You're not like, you are trying to, eat cake that has not been fucking cooked yet. And that was a tough realization for me because I knew just in that moment, just like at the pond, I was like, man, I'm going to have to do some really hard stuff to make sure that this is going to work. And so what I realized in that moment was I am going to have to push really hard on the business when I get back from this trip to Belize and develop a real solid foundation to make sure that we're just set and that we're good to go before I try taking myself out of it and doing this podcast thing. And that's what I did. That's what I did. I made the decision when I got back from that trip that the podcast might have to go on the shelf for a little bit. And it was a very hard, very honest conversation with myself where I had to look at work-life balance. Let's just call it, just say that the podcast was on the life side of that work-life balance. And I had to take the advice of Brad Bernhardt, who is a great mentor of mine. And he said on the Owner's Journal podcast, he said, the problem with work-life balance is that people look at it too closely. If you can just zoom out a little bit and see your work-life balance from a 3-month period, from a 6-month period, from a year, your picture might actually change a little bit. And it was such good advice coming from him because he's so busy during the holidays. He's got a company called Earlywood that makes like heirloom quality bowls and kitchen utensils and things like that. It's this beautiful company. And they have had a really good go of it where they just have a whole gang of orders that come in on the holidays. And during that time, like he's on the floor, he's in the warehouse, he's working like 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours. And when you see him during that time, if you get to see him, he is just spent. And he was saying that like, if you zoomed in at that point and looked at his work-life balance, then be like, you do not have any balance whatsoever. Please go get help. Like something is broken here. But however, if you saw him during the summer when his family is traveling and they're chilling and they're doing their thing and there's so much fun, you'd also zoom in there and be like, oh, dude, you made it. You barely have to work. You don't have to do this and that. Your family's set. You guys are taken care of. But both of those, when you look at them independent of each other, look like either super crazy burnout, not balanced, or super crazy, live free, dang, you must have made it. When you zoom out over the course of a year, you can look at it and say, okay, this is how this balance works. There's a couple of months towards the end of the year where things are really busy that allow for the rest of the year to be whatever that looks like. And so in this moment, I looked at what was upcoming on this next chapter and I said, okay, this last one was about personal development. This next one's going to be about professional development. And I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit and say, okay, during these next handful of months, it is going to be very work heavy. However, if I can zoom out and look at the course of a year, I'm really doing this to make sure that I can put myself in a position where I can take that podcast book back off the shelf, dust it off, and like approach it with balance and have a sturdy foundation where like the business can be very successful and I can have enough time consistently to give myself to the podcast and like do a good job with it. And so that's exactly what I did. There is a thing that Summer says all the time. It's one of like her core tenets in her approach to therapy. And she says alignment over action. And to me, that was just super, super important because my alignment was I am doing the right thing for my business so that I can take care of my people and my clients. And as a result of that, I am also aligning towards my life goal, which is to be one of the biggest podcasters in the world. And so that means that there are going to be long nights that are more business focused that I might miss some of the stuff on the personal side. There's going to be times where I have to like absolutely strong arm present time into my schedule and like force myself to go to the gym or force myself to train during this chapter. But it is all aligned towards the actual goal that I want to get to. And that's pretty much exactly how that chapter went. We launched a new offer in our business that required me to learn a lot of really new things. Before we were just kind of doing like photos and videos and social media management and doing like industry calls it like organic social media content creation and social media management. And what I ended up doing was taking some of the things that I learned in the marketing agency I worked at right out of college and brought those into our business. I did a ton of education on how to get back into like building marketing funnels and running paid ads and delivering actual value to clients where we could come to them and say, hey, we're going to sell you this thing for $1. And we're going to be able to show you that when you pay us this dollar, we're going to give you $4 back because we're going to get in front of your target audience. We're going to buy stuff. We're going to track it. Like everything. This is how this is going to work. And that offer went really well. Pretty much spent all summer learning how to do that offer. And then once it started to take off, we had full day video shoots. I was having to build all of the campaigns and stuff like that on my computer and do the copywriting. And essentially it was just like full tilt business mode. I was spending a ton of time doing sales. I was doing a ton of time being on the shoots and like learning what's required of the creatives in that process. And like, it was kind of jet ski mode a little bit, to be completely honest. But I had this alignment and this goal of like, dude, we got to do this because this is going to become a very key part of the foundation for this business going forwards. And it worked, man. It freaking worked. One of the hardest things about sitting at that pond was knowing that to dig myself out of that hole, it was going to be a lot of work. And with all of that work, there's no guarantee that I was headed in the right direction or that people would pay for this thing or that people, that it was essentially a solvable problem. And I put my head down and I did that shit anyways, and it freaking worked. And during the time of all of that, kind of self-inflicted burnout where I knew it was going to happen, one of the things that I had taken from that personal development chapter was that whole thing is like, don't let hard work be the only thing you're working hard at. And I looked at it and I was like, fuck, this is kind of what I'm signing up for. It's like only working hard at the hard work. So how can I make sure that it's not the only thing I'm working hard at? So what I did was throughout the course of the summer, I essentially like reclaimed at least one day a week on a weekend to do something in my personal life. And a lot of times it was going to do something on the weekend. Like we went to my buddy's cabin and spent 2 nights there with his kids, no cell service, hanging out in the woods, like swimming in the river, just having a great time. Or going to do like an overnight trip and going to a concert at the old saloon and like car camping, going on hikes, doing backyard barbecues with friends. Like there was always at least one thing. And I think that is what made that chapter bearable, maybe in some ways, but also successful. And towards the end of that chapter, I was on a podcast with Parker Brown. Shout out to Parker if you're listening. He sent me a screenshot of his Spotify Wrapped, and he was one of the top listeners of this show. So love the hell out of Parker Brown. Check out his music and his podcast if you haven't already. But anyways, I was on his show and kind of had this epiphany as we were talking that pattern breaks are a very important thing. And I hadn't realized, even as I was doing it, that I was kind of learning this to be true about myself and about my professional life, is that it's very important to break our routine in some ways. When I'm working really hard, it's very routine oriented. I lift pretty much at the same time. I eat the same breakfast. I work until the work is done. And then that's pretty much it. And those days look very similar. It's a lot of clacking away at the computer. It's a lot of, being in the same places, talking to the same people, serving the same clients. And it's very routine. What I realized though, is that even over the course of an entire summer, where that's most of what my life looked like, I had all of these memories to attach to because of me taking those weekends and taking those little trips, that like, that's how my brain remembers this summer. Like I remember the concerts that I went to. I remember the rodeos. I remember the time with my friends and their kids. I remember like so many of these like really beautiful moments, although those were like 5% of what I spent my time doing. And that was so profound to me because I realized as I was talking to Parker, that our memory attaches to these pattern breaks. It doesn't attach to our routine. Like our routine is this long strand like you see in a timeline, and it's like the thing that doesn't have any pop-ups on it. But if you've like ever seen a history book before, there's always that little pop-up of like, okay, week 4 of summer. And then it's got the little picture of the old saloon and a Dylan Gossett concert and like a little blurb about why that was awesome. Like that's a thing in the memory because it was a pattern break. And that visual was so helpful for me because I'm like, dude, okay, if I just know that if I do something out of the ordinary and get out of this routine, that like it gives my brain some reprieve and it gives me a cool memory, and it like, this is how I'm going to remember my life. That's so much better than just being like, no, I have to work that extra, 24 hours and I have to do whatever. There's no way I would have remembered whatever thing I got done on my to-do list or whatever extra boxes I checked off. I don't remember pretty much any of them from last summer, to be completely honest, but I remember the handful of things that I decided to go do and have fun. And it was so rewarding. So, that was one of the most important things for me, is to realize that these pattern breaks is such an important thing. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from that year. When I really think about that chapter, in my brain, it was a lot shorter than it really was. And like I said, I was kind of like reviewing my journal and some different things going into this episode. And I thought that it was like maybe like March to like July or March to June or something like that. But this professional development chapter lasted really most of this year. It was like March all the way through like early October, or really late October, which was a long time. It felt really long. There was a lot of challenges in there. There was a lot of grind. There was a lot of all of that stuff. But like I said, I'm so proud of it because it took a chance and it worked. And towards the end of that chapter, I had gone so hard on the business, and I was so busy not only learning how to do the stuff, but then selling the stuff and then delivering on the stuff. And then there was a point towards the end of the summer where things were just kind of rolling. Like our clients were set up, their content was set up, their campaigns were doing well. We had learned enough where we were starting to develop a little bit of routine and a flow with these things. And I started like unknowingly getting a little bit of time back. And with that time, I was so excited because I'm like, holy shit, here we go. Okay, now I get to start training MMA a little bit and seeing some of those buddies again. And that was really fun. And then there were times that I got to like go lift in the afternoon instead of having to do it in the morning. And I could like do some other stuff. I'm like, holy shit, I think I'm going to be able to do some podcast episodes. And so I started finding some time in my calendar where like, okay, I can make that afternoon happen. We're going to record a podcast episode. And then we start getting some clips out. And then I start getting like, things are kind of just like the momentum is kind of picking up again. And it felt so good because I wasn't doing that thing where I was like neglecting my business or neglecting my personal life or something to get this moment. And it felt so good, man. And I noticed at that time, one of this is a little bit of an Easter egg for if you stay for the end of the episode, but one of the biggest tenets that I live my life by is this idea of chasing butterflies. And the idea is if you spend all day chasing one butterfly and swiping at it with a net, it's going to fly off and it's going to run away, and you're going to spend all day chasing this thing and trying to grab it. A lot of times you're going to come back tired without a butterfly. However, if instead you spend your time focusing on building a beautiful garden and doing all of the things that you need to do to cultivate this like beautiful place that you want to be, you'll look around and you'll have more butterflies than you know what to do with. And during this time where I finally started getting all of these things back in my life, I got so excited because I'm like, holy shit, I get to start building these other beds in the garden again. Like I've been so focused on this flower bed of the business thing. And now I get to start building some of like my workout and my fitness life back. And I get to start building my, boxing and jiu-jitsu life back, and my social life and my podcast. And I just like, for a little while, I started to do it. It felt so good. And I really started focusing on building that garden and finding that flow of being supportive with my business and supporting the podcast and like being a good friend and a good family member. And some really beautiful things started to happen in my life. I was at the gym and randomly met somebody that turned out to be like a huge blessing in my life. And we like developed this really cool friend group where we were just doing so much fun shit. I talked about it in one of these podcasts, but like one of my favorite memories of all time was this pattern break, this day trip that we took, where one of us had a Thursday off and the rest of us could make it happen. And so we drove up to Red Lodge. And for those of you who don't know, it's about an hour outside of Billings. And we went and hung out by the river for a minute and like skipped some rocks and like listened to music the whole way. And we're yapping, just having a good time. And then we got dinner at Ox Pasture, which is this amazing Italian restaurant. And that was a super good time. And then we just like walked downtown afterwards, shot a little bit of pool, hung out. Like it was the coolest vibe. And I remember driving home, and it was at night. We had Zach Bryan rolling on the radio, and everyone was just like, I think it was one of those times where you could just like feel like, man, this is one of those times. It was awesome. I realized at that time that I had entered this golden moment thing that I took from my professor, Will, at the Grindhouse. And I had been waiting for a really long time to find myself in one of these positions where I could like actually put his advice into action. But there was a time where I was working with Will. We do the Grindhouse marketing, and there was this project that we've been talking about doing for a while. I came up to him. I was like, "Hey man, it's ready. Do you want to launch this thing?" And he looks at me and he kind of smiles and he's like, "You know what, man? I think I'm good." It's like, "What the fuck? What do you mean, dude? We've been planning this thing for a while, and like, it's finally time. Like, let's do this thing." He goes, "Honestly, dude, right now, everything's kind of rolling for me. Everything kind of feels golden. Like I just, we're about to move into this house I've always wanted to live in. This kava bar that I've been working on is opening, and things are good at the gym. So I don't really want to fuck with this right now, man. Like these golden moments, they don't come around very often. So I'm going to enjoy this one." And I was just like, my jaw must have been touching my shoelaces, man. I was dumbfounded because at the time I was such a jet ski boy. I had never thought to stop the jet ski and just be like, wow, this is a really cool part of the lake. We should look around and just be here for a minute. And I did not have an opportunity to put that lesson into practice until really this fall. And we're driving back from Red Lodge, and it's just like the most wholesome night. Just heart is so full, cup is full, things are feeling so great. And I made a commitment to myself that night. I was like, man, we've done it. Like we're in one of those golden moments right now. I'm not going to wait until this thing is over to realize that like this is one of those things, because you always see it in hindsight. And so I realized, I was like, as long as this thing lasts, I'm going to let myself enjoy it. I'm going to let myself have fun. I'm going to let myself enjoy everything from that moment at the pond to like the work that was put in over the summer and like all of the hard things. I was like, man, you have done everything right that was in your control to get to this moment, and you're getting a reward right now. I don't know if I deserve it. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know, but like, man, have you been building this fucking garden and like some butterflies just showed up, and let's just sit in it and enjoy the company and like enjoy this moment for a little while. And so I did. I didn't, how I approached that golden chapter was like, I really started to let myself have fun. And I think that that's one of the things that was missing in so much of really my life in general, but really those chapters was like, it was so destination focused. It was, who do you want to be? What are you building towards? How can we get the business here? Like, it was so like, it was aligned. Again, it was aligned, but it was so much action, and it was so fucking headstrong, determined that like, I didn't have a lot of room for fun. It felt like in my life. And so like these people just brought that back in, and it felt so fun. Like found myself like singing in car rides again, and like dancing and shit in the morning, getting ready ready for the day, and doing like going to cycle classes and just doing some like random fun shit that, I didn't have the time for before. And there were even some times too where like, something would come up where it's like, hey, do you want to hang out at this point? And there would be shit on my to-do list, but I'd look and take an honest look at it and say, okay, really, I need to get one of these things done, and the other two can happen tomorrow. So let's go do the pattern break. Let's go have some fun. Let's like make something of that lesson that we learned this summer and enjoy it. And for the first time in my life, I can like really, it's the first time that I've been able to look back and be like, wow, there was one of those moments where it felt like the good old days. And I freaking caught it while I was in them. And I said, we're riding this bitch till the wheels fall off. And it felt so good. And I'm so proud of myself for that. And I'm so happy it happened. I'm so happy it happened. And just like all good things, it came to an end. It came to an end. But a lot of that chapter, I started getting excited about like the way things existed. And I was like, okay, we're doing the podcast and that feels good. The business is in a good spot and that feels good. And my social life feels good. So how can we just scale this thing? And if you've listened to the last podcast episode, this is going to be a funny moment because I was wrong. I was looking around at those things and being like, okay, if I set the foundation for all these things, now how can we scale it? And I thought that the next chapter was going to be titled Getting Good, because what I wanted to do was take the business, take my friendships and my personal life, and take the podcast and just scale everything and say, how can we just get more of the good things that are happening right now? And what I didn't realize at the time was that I had yet to ask myself the question, like, okay, we've gotten this far. Is this what we want to get good at? I was planning some big shit for my life. There's a lot of really big moves in the business that were being planned. A lot of huge moves in my personal life that would have changed a lot of things. And for the podcast as well, it was like there's some stuff that would have been cool there too. But when this chapter ended, essentially what happened was that, I'm just going to be straight up about it. Heartbreak killed that one. I lost somebody that meant a lot to me, and it was a real bummer, man. And I think what happened is that it was a bit of just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And there was a day that, at least this one I kind of felt it coming, but like there was a day where I kind of knew that this chapter, I was like, I could just feel it. I woke up feeling it. I was like, man, this might be the end of this little golden chapter. That day, my buddy Brady, he was going through some shit, man. And he'd been posting about the fact that he wasn't getting any sleep because he had broken his neck and he had this pinched nerve. And he was posting these stories on his Instagram that he was calling sessions, where essentially he was like not sleeping at all because of this nerve pain. And he was talking to God and to himself and just really going through it. And so I was like, you know what, man, I think the best thing that I could do right now where I'm feeling like things might be changing in my life is like, let's just get out of my own way and let's just like show up for somebody else right now. So I called Brady. And I was headed down to a Rocky game where I was just going to like watch the football game and hang out and do that kind of thing. And I spent 2 hours on the phone with Brady that day. And while I was on the phone with him, I got the text that I would essentially be losing somebody that was making my life feel pretty fun at the time. And I did not end up going to the football game. Brady and I spent 2 hours on the phone. And in showing up for him, I had one of the most pivotal conversations that I've had in my life. And Brady in these sessions with God and with himself and battling the demons of sleep deprivation and hallucinations, he got some crazy good insights out of it. And he's been on 2 episodes. He was actually on an episode a couple back if you want to watch that one. And he's just one of the most insightful dudes that I know. He's a phenomenal writer. He's a poet. He's one of the most well-thought guys that I have the pleasure of being friends with. And I knew when I called him, I was like, man, whatever I've got going on right now is nothing compared to what he's going on. And he always takes the time to do that thing, man, to not turn it into a shit show and to find the meaning of it and to become better and to show it for other people, even through his suffering. And on this phone call, we talked about a whole gang of stuff. We were talking about like measures of success and what it means to be successful. And I was, telling him how crazy it is, how he deals with a lot of the same stuff that I deal with now, but he's accomplished things and is in a position where that I want to be in. And like, you know, we're just talking about a whole lot of different shit, sleep deprivation, neck problems, all the stuff. But during that conversation, he hit me with a question that became the title of the chapter that I'm in now and absolutely flipped my world on its head. Thank goodness. It's in a segment on the podcast, and it's also in the full episode of the last one we did together. If you want to get the good version of the story, because Brady's a much better storyteller than I am. But we're on the phone and he's like, man, I had this weird dream hallucination thing that I just cannot shake. He's like, it might be one of the most profound things I've ever experienced. All right, well, hit me. And he tells a story about how he found himself in this like super apocalyptic library that was made for giants. And in this library, he's looking up and there's like 60 stories of the biggest books that you've ever seen. And there's just rows and rows and rows and rows of them. And he got this sense where he's like, man, there is so much knowledge out there. There's so much to learn. Like, how could you possibly understand all of this and like understand the world that we're in and all of the ideas? It's like this overwhelming thing. And then this librarian walks up to him and he looks like the guy off the Progressive commercials. It's like got the tattered, dress shirt and he's all fucked up and the whole thing. And he's walking up to Brady as he's like taking in this whole library. He goes, Mr. McLean, I have some matters for you. And Brady looks at him and he goes, what matters? The guy goes, exactly. That is your mission. What matters? And he hands Brady this envelope, this like manila folder. And on a little thing on the front of it, it says, what matters? And the way Brady describes it, I'm literally getting goosebumps talking about this. He said there was maybe 3 pieces of paper in that envelope. And he didn't open it. And as he's absorbing the fact that he's like, wow, that was weird. What matters? And the thing said what matters on it. And that there's not that many papers in there. He looks up. And in this neon sign just flickering over this library, there's a sign that says, what doesn't matter? And just like I was talking about at the beginning of this podcast, that story hit me so hard because of all of the things that we can choose to learn and try to understand and all of these different things. It's like, dude, like 3 things really matter. It's not that much. And what I realized was as I was working on stepping into this next chapter, I hadn't asked myself that question right before I was about to try to scale everything that I was doing. I can't believe that I did not have the insight to ask myself the question, like, what matters? And that floored me, man. And it floored me at a time where I think that, like, you know, God's got a weird way of putting you in exactly the situation that you have to be in. Like, it was real weird that I had that trip planned to Belize when I needed it. It's real weird that I, you know, went through a 5-year breakup the same day that I lost the person, like the GM in my business. It was just one of those things where, like, going through another heartbreak right at the same time that Brady hits me with this question, what matters? I was like fully chest open, like vulnerable to whatever the world was going to throw at me that day. That's what it hit me with. I'm so grateful for Brady and like the time that he took to speak to me and, you know, share that story with me. But it changed immediately what my next chapter of life was going to be. And I even erased it off my mirror. I took it off. It said chapter 3, getting good. And I erased it and I said, chapter 3, what matters? And what I realized at that time is that I think that so much of my life had been just kind of running on the track and just like navigating whatever came out to me. It's almost like those video games that they used to make before they got good, where there'd be like a race car in the very middle of the screen in the bottom. And like, it didn't really even look like you were driving. It looked like the race car was staying in the same spot. And you kind of had to like move it to the right or move it to the left. And the track would be the only thing that was moving, but like the race car was in the same spot. So you just kind of had to react to where the track was going. And now it looks like a movie or something like that where you're driving. But that's a lot of the way that I felt like I was living my life. Like growing up, I always wanted to play football in college and get a college scholarship, so I didn't have student loans coming out of school. And so I went as hard as I could and did everything that I could to get a scholarship, and ended up with a handful of offers, none of which I was super stoked about, and went to the one that made the most sense. It's like, this is the most amount of money, best business community for if I graduate and there's opportunity, I guess I'll do this one. It's like the track moved that way, and I was like, okay, I'll move the car. I'll go to that school, I guess. And then I get through, college, have a couple of internships, play football, whatever. And then the next thing pops up and it's like, okay, here's a marketing job. Seems really well paid. It seems like that dude is going to be a great mentor. It's going to be a great experience. I don't, really didn't intend on going into marketing. I was kind of just open to it. So I guess we're going to go to marketing. So we're going to move the car that way. And then, the burnout thing happens and it seems like there's a glass ceiling at that place. And so it's like, all right, well, I guess I'll move over and start my own marketing thing. When I go to do that, it's like, well, we don't really want the thing you've been doing. We want social media and websites. So I'm going to turn the car back and do that. And it seemed like so much of my life was just like these reactive situations where I would do the thing that I felt like I was supposed to do. And then something would come into my path where I'm like, okay, that seems like the best option. Now that seems like the best option. And I was kind of just corn mazing myself around whatever decision where I'm like, well, I guess that way looks better. But I don't really think I ever took the time to stop and be like, dude, what the fuck actually matters to me? Like what are we basing all these decisions on outside of the fact that just like with all of the variables that exist in my life right now, that seems like the best direction to go. And so one of the things that I did was I wrote in my journal what matters. And here's what I have. It's a very short list, not many things in this envelope. I wrote, number 1, being in a relationship with somebody I love and who loves me. Number 2, having a group of friends and a community that I love and that loves me back. Number 3, being a part of a family and creating a family where they know I love them and they love me. Number 4, pursuing a calling where I get to give to the world and feel fulfilled and aligned in my contribution. Doing that right now. Number 5, loving myself. That's not that many things, man. It really isn't. And when I look at those, most of them have to do with people. 4 out of 5 of them have to do with people. And it's so backwards from how I lived my life before, because most of the time I was making those decisions, it would be, okay, well, what, makes the most money, or what feels like it'll be the most successful, or give me the most freedom, or look the coolest, or, whatever I was optimizing for. And I hadn't taken the time to actually write these. And so when I really think about it, it's like, okay, well, being in a relationship with somebody I love and who loves me is one of the things that actually matters to me. And so when on social media, you see like this, like the Dan Bilzerian type of thing where it's like, glorified to, be on a yacht in Miami and have a bunch of girls there, or travel overseas and do all that, that same kind of thing over there, or have a bunch of like, memories and hookup culture, do all that kind of stuff. It's like, that doesn't mean nearly what it means to me to have somebody who I like deeply care about and deeply cares about me. And the best moments I've had with other people in relationships so far outweigh the best moments that I've had doing any of the other shallow stuff that exists in this world. And the heartbreak that I felt when I lose somebody that I really, really care about is so much bigger than the heartbreak that I feel when you say, goodbye to somebody who you had a 2-day connection with. And so what the fuck are we doing even thinking about optimizing anything in life for something that isn't like finding that person or finding a relationship that matters like that? So boom, immediately lots of decisions become super clear right there. Who are you going to let into your life? Who are you going to cut out of your life? All of the stuff. The group of friends in the community, like where do you live? Who are the people you surround yourself with? What places do you go? What are your hobbies? The family thing, I need to make sure that I call them. They don't live where I live, so I have to make time to go see them during the year. pursuing a calling where I get to give to the world and feel fulfilled and aligned in my contribution. Like this is that thing. And I aligned this year in so many ways where I can have a successful business and use that to fund this project. And I have to make sure that I stay true to this thing because it feels like giving to the world. It feels like I get to give to my guests and give them a platform. It feels like I get to give to all of you who like give me your time and attention and give you stories or frameworks or tools to help with your life. And it feels like the whole thing is giving. You guys give back to me and like talking about the ideas that you have and asking insightful questions and becoming friends with me. And it's so fucking cool, man. So like, I have to make sure that I'm doing that and like making decisions based on where this thing can be the most successful. And the last one, man, loving myself. It's tough, man. But there's so many decisions that need to go around that. Again, who do you let in your life? Who feeds you? So much of this stuff, what feeds you? And one of the things that I've learned about myself is that I tend to outsource my sense of self-love quite a bit. There's this idea, there's a quote, and sorry to who said this, but there's a quote that says, other people's heads is a very dangerous place for your self-worth to live in. And that is so true. It has lived in other people's heads for me. It's lived in a lot of different places, but again, it matters. And it's something that I need to like continue working on myself, continue finding mentors, continue honoring myself and making decisions based on that. But all that to say that really, it's not a long list. And this chapter that I'm going into right now, I think that, having that sense of loss and having the stark contrast of like having so much fun in that little golden chapter and then feeling like it kind of got ripped away. It was a straw that broke the camel's back a bit and it hurt a lot. And there's still days that it isn't super easy, but what I'm so grateful for is that just like everything else, I looked at it and I was like, fuck man, okay, I'm going to feel this. I'm going to learn about attachment styles and how I could have approached this better on my end and understanding other people. I'm going to reach out to my friends. I'm going to take the extra time to take inventory in my life and my business and ask myself some hard questions. And I've done it. And when I look at this chapter so far and kind of what's existed, like I've gotten so much closer to Brady, who is one of the coolest people. I've gotten closer to Drew. I've gotten closer to my parents, to my little brother, been able to show up for him in ways where he was dealing with similar things that I didn't even know about. I avoided some huge moves in my life that I was planning on making and have really just like had this beautiful reset where I feel like I'm kind of back into that alignment where maybe I was blinded by or maybe just overexcited about some of the success that I was having or some of the things that were going good in my life. I feel like maybe that was an intervention that needed to happen and that pain needed to be everything that it was to have me make some really big changes. So, that being said, that's the chapter that we're in right now, is this idea of what matters. And so, obviously those 5 things for me is what matters. And I think that this chapter is figuring out where all of the other puzzle pieces fit in relation to those things. So taking my business, taking my social life, taking my hobbies, taking my habits and running them through the things that matter and say, do these things get me closer to what actually matters to me and the person that I'm trying to be? And maybe we reintroduce that chapter of getting good after we figure out how all of those things fit. But I think it's really important for me right now to ask myself what actually matters and start making some decisions based on that instead. So that being said, some of the changes that I've made so far are, number one is just dedicating myself to the podcast. Over the last 2 weeks, we've recorded 4 episodes, which is really great. I've got a couple booked in Boise that I'm really excited about. I'll be in Boise by this time, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm also going to start doing remote podcasting, which I'm really excited about. So obviously living in Billings, Montana, we're not as big of a market as in Austin, LA, New York, or any place like that. And so I've got a couple of mentors in the podcast space who have been willing to give me some tips and stuff on how to do remote podcasts. And that's something that I'm going to start looping in. So I'm going to do my best to find guests who are have a little bit bigger audiences and who have very impactful stories, and still give them a platform, even though I can't always go to them or they can't always come to Billings right now. So that's going to be a really big thing. At the very end, I'll announce a couple of other things that are exciting about it too, but I'm very excited about that. The other thing that I have started to do is to make some changes in my business. There are a lot of ways that I am a perfectionist and can be a bit of a micromanager in certain areas of the business that I am just letting go of. And by letting go, I mean that I'm really trying to empower the people who are on my team to grow into some of those areas and to really like uplift them in the work that they do. So instead of me meddling in, hey, we've got this shoot coming up, here are the videos we should do and the photos we should do and these angles and these shot lists and blah, blah, blah. Like I have an entire team of videographers and photographers. They are inherently good at this shit. So I am doing my best to like empower them to be doing those sorts of things and empower my social media coordinator to like take some things off of her plate so that she can get really good at her job. And for me to step into the things that I'm really good at, which is the biz dev and the growth and the people side of the business and that sort of thing. Which also gives me time back to do the podcast and gives it back to me in a way where I'm not neglecting those things. I'm actually trying to like raise the tide so that all the boats float at the same level this time. So I'm very excited about that. And then one of the other things that is very, very new to me, which we'll spend a second on, is going to church. Was not on my bingo card for something that I would start doing this year, but it's something that a lot of the conversations with Brady kind of brought me to, and it's been an interesting journey. I was not raised religiously at all. There are actually a lot of moments that religion probably would have been a little bit more helpful than some of the existential crises I went through and some of that stuff, which I'm glad at the time that I didn't have that to lean on. But regardless, it's something that I'm exploring right now. And there's a handful of reasons there's a handful of reasons I decided to do that. And the first one, to be completely honest, was just like, I'm fucking tired, man. I wrote in my journal at one point that, as I was kind of like examining why I was interested in going to church and why I was interested in seeking out God and some different levels of spirituality, was that I'm just tired. I've spent all of this time white knuckling my way to success. I spent time, I was told that if I worked hard enough that I would get a football scholarship and that I would be stoked about college and, graduate without debt and all of those things. And like, it was kind of a letdown. And then I white knuckled my way into this career at this marketing agency, and all of the things that I thought were going to be cool were pretty cool, but like, didn't feel like I wanted it to feel. And then with the business, it's like, there's been so many cool things about it, but I still look at myself and I'm like, for all of the hard work that I've done, I can't look at myself in the mirror and just be like, yep, I freaking nailed it. I did all of this on my own. I'm going to continue doing all of this on my own. I know exactly what's going to happen. I can keep pushing this boulder uphill, and like, it's all on me, but it's all going to work. It's the program that I've ran for so long, and it's fucking exhausting. I look at people who used to pray before football games, and I'd be envious at times because I'm like, in my head, playing quarterback, I've got the entire playbook. I've got the game plan. I've got all the reads that I need to make. I've got all of the different scenarios and all these things in the back of my head. And I'm like, man, I hope I don't fuck any of these up. I hope that I can always make the right decision and always do the right thing and blah, blah, blah. And then if I do the right thing every time, then we're going to win the game. And man, I just I was just envious of people who would be like, you know what, man, I prepared and God is going to put me in the right position and whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. And I'm going to ask for his blessing in this moment. Like the amount of pressure that takes off, the amount of confidence that must come with that. And so many things. I was like, man, I would love to just get a freaking hit of that. And there's also been so many things that have happened in my life that I just don't know if I can point to coincidence for all of them. You know, I'm a strong believer in karma. I'm a strong believer that what you put out into the world comes back to you, both good and bad. I believe that we have agency. I believe that we have free will. And I've just operated in this sense of like, if you want something to get done, you have to do it. But there's been so many things I just don't think I can chalk up to coincidence or just like the perfect timing or the perfect karma happening at the right time to be like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this is all me. And I don't want it to be, man. In so many ways, I think it'd be so nice to be able to feel like somebody else is on my team, to feel like I don't have to do all this alone. Entrepreneurship is a very, 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 very lonely game. And when the bullets start flying, people look to you. And there's nobody for me to look to a lot of times, which is exactly what I signed up for. So I'm not complaining about it, but it is hard at times. And it feels that way in my personal life a bit, and all of that too. So I would just like, I think that there's a lot of ways where I'm just like, man, for all of the work that I've done, I can't even look at myself and be like, I'm the one that did all of this. I'm the one that made all these things happen, or that I was right about the directions that I was going in. I feel like so many of these hard moments that I've had this year might have been me just white knuckling my way to something. And, you know, God maybe being like, man, I hate that these lessons have to keep being so hard for you, man, but we got to course correct you somehow. We got to get you back on the right track. And boy, am I glad if that's what's happening, because I've been a couple close calls about going down the wrong direction. But, yeah, I want to feel like somebody's on my team. Like there's some kind of hand that's guiding me, or there's some kind of something that's putting things in my path for the right reason. And that I can trust that in difficult moments that I can trust that things are going to be okay. And that if I do the right thing in my heart and what I feel is right, that things are going to work out. So that's a big one. I guess that's a big two. And the last one was just that, like, I take so much inspiration from so many different sources. And for whatever reason, I've always cast off religion as this one that I'm just not really willing to take a ton from. And I don't really know why, because I'm willing to listen to probably thousands of hours of podcasts and to read and to have deep conversations with friends and mentors. And like, I've got all of these different places that information flows from. But for whatever reason, I've always cast off religion as like, nope, not going to do that one, because if I do that one, then I have to claim that I'm a Christian or a Catholic or this or that. And I'm not ready to say that I'm full in, so I'm just not going to do it. And I just think that might be a little goofy. It's one of the oldest sources of information that people have used forever. It's such a great equalizer because so many people can operate off of an understanding of the Bible. And like, it's just a source of information where I'm like, why cast this thing off? Like, I don't listen to, everything that my favorite podcasters say and take that for like, yep, that's gospel. That has to be exactly how I live my life. It has to be how I change things. Like, it's always bits and pieces. It's bits and pieces from them. It's bits and pieces from mentors. And like, you take the things that are helpful. And so that's how I'm approaching my like curiosity about religion right now. And the times that I've gone to church have been a lot of that. And so it's been actually very helpful, and it's been very exciting for me to learn from some of those different sermons that I've been to. It was, again, maybe a God thing that the first sermon that I went to, I went with a friend, and I'm very grateful to her for taking me with her, because it was a bit of an overwhelming thing for me and very uncomfortable for sure. So very grateful for that. But as we're sitting in this sermon, the pastor talks about, you're going to have to forgive me, I don't know the book. I think it was John. But anyways, he is giving this sermon about the difference between the good shepherd and a paid hand. And he was talking about how a good shepherd, when the wolves show up and intimidate the flock of sheep, the good shepherd will die for that flock of sheep, because they are his sheep and his calling is to be a shepherd. So when the wolves show up, this dude is 10 toes down and he's willing to die for protection of his sheep. On the other side, if the wolves showed up and there's a paid hand that's running the sheep, he's out of there. He's heading for the hills, and all of those sheep are going to get slaughtered because they are not his sheep, and his calling is not to be a shepherd. And it was one of the most powerful things that I could have heard at that time, because this was days after hearing Brady's story about what matters. And I think that the good shepherd asks himself the question, what matters? And he dedicates himself to it. And that's why he's willing to die for his sheep, because that's what matters. He's in his calling. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Those sheep matter to him. His role as a shepherd matters. His honor, like all of these things are in alignment. So he'll do whatever it takes to honor that calling. And it was a very great time for me to be hearing this message, because as I'm trying to figure out what matters, I was able to ask myself the question, what is my flock of sheep? What am I willing to die for? What am I willing to claim as the thing that is me? What am I willing to claim as my profession? And what am I willing to care for in that way? And so, moments like that have been very, very exciting for me. And yeah, I just think that it's a big change for me that I did not have on the bingo card, but I'm really excited to continue kind of diving down that journey and seeing what comes from it. It's something that's very new to me. And I think that that's something that's kind of very, very consistent with this chapter right now. It feels like it feels like with asking myself these questions of what matters, there's a handful of things that are coming up that I realize that I'm just not super good at yet that do matter to me. I'm not good at the spirituality thing, and it feels very new. I don't feel like, I know like I'm not a pro at podcasting yet. Hopefully this one is a new format and hopefully it's been helpful, but like there's still so much I have to learn, and I haven't made $1 from this. And so I would really like to, I need to step into that. I need to learn. There's things in my business that I need to do where I need to be uncomfortable with empowering some people and letting them grow into that. And I need to become a better leader and become a better delegator in so many different things. And so, it's very uncomfortable in a lot of ways not to just do what you're already good at and have this sense of just being the man. You know, like feeling like, oh man, like I'm making all these sales, the business is growing, my social life is good, all of these things, like whatever. In some ways, that's where I may have headed if I would have just scaled all of the things that I was doing before this What Matters chapter. And I think that it's easy for people to do that because I think if you get good at the wrong things, you build yourself a golden prison. And that can be in a career, it can be in relationships, it can be in whatever. But like, if you get too good at the wrong things, you start to build your life around them. Like, you start getting paid really well for a job and it's like, man, well, I don't really like this that much, but I'm going to stick to it because it makes a lot of money. And when you're making a lot of money, you get a pretty sweet house and a pretty big mortgage payment. And then you get yourself a pretty sweet car, and then your wife a pretty sweet car. Then you put your kids in private school. And then all of these things happen where you've got to maintain this lifestyle that relies on you making all of this money. And the thing that was originally, oh man, I'm just going to do this for right now, like I don't really like what I'm doing, but it's going good. I must have gotten far enough in my career. I must have done whatever where I'm going to get paid this kind of money. But now you have to make that money. You have to stay in that career because you've got all of these other things in your life that are counting on you continuing to make that money and continuing to stay in that career that you don't like and continuing to build in this direction that wasn't yours in the first place. And so I think that golden prison is a very, very, very interesting reminder to me where like, instead of just getting good at shit because it's rolling and it's working right now, I really want to make sure that like whatever foundation or whatever building blocks I'm using to build my life are not going to put me in a position where I am trapped by my career or trapped by a relationship or trapped by the place that I live or trapped by anything that was done not on purpose. So that really feels like the most pivotal thing in this chapter right now is just like being okay if it's like, hey, just because you're not good at this right now doesn't mean that it's not part of your path. And I've sucked at stuff before and it's okay to suck at stuff again, but let's not get too good at the wrong things because if you do, you might start getting paid for it. And if you start getting paid a lot for it, you might have to keep doing it. Or if you get, too far down the line with somebody, a friend or a relationship who isn't supposed to be in your life, you might get too far into that and you might have to do a lot of unwinding to get them out. Or you might, end up making some mistakes and now they're in it forever. Like, who knows? But that's very important to me right now is just like being okay sucking. And there's a lot of uncomfortability that comes with that. Quite frankly, this chapter so far has been very, very difficult. I've spent a lot of nights pretty sleepless and spent a lot of days not eating much and taken a lot of time to reflect and just figure out what's next. And it's also been tricky doing that because part of my commitment to the podcast is being more open about my thoughts and putting them out on social media and trying to be as helpful as possible. But Brady said something in the first podcast we did. He was like, man, sometimes, people want you to show up authentically on social media and like be open. But the most authentic thing for you at that time is just to say nothing because you really don't want to show up and you don't want to share when things suck and you don't want to be putting that out there. And in a lot of ways, that's how I felt right now. I have not been feeling super inspirational. And there's this quote that says, being inspirational when things are going well is like being generous when you're rich. And it is easy in the easy moments, man. It's easy during those golden chapters to talk about how important it is to persevere through hard times and how important those hard times are. And, just kind of get on your fucking high horse about, how sweet everything is and all of that. But boy, when you're in the middle of it, is it hard to talk about gratitude for some of those things and talk about seeing the other side because the tunnel's dark at times. So I think that those are kind of the things I'm leaning into right now is I feel like I'm really getting a beat on some of the things that matter. And I'm doing my very best to set my life and my business and my relationships and, everything that I'm doing on the right tracks so that I can start moving those things forward and make decisions to build something that I'm really proud of and build a life that is fulfilling to me and full of love and full of great people and full of purpose. So I'm very, very, very excited to be stepping into this chapter and I'm excited to see what comes from it. So yeah, I had a couple of takeaways in here that I just kind of want to rapid fire. So some of the most helpful takeaways that I've had from this year are, number one, we've talked about just calling one person that I love every day or spending time with somebody that I love every day. It's brought me closer. That has been the one thing that has brought me close to friends and family and mentors over any other thing that I've tried in my life up to this point. So that has been a huge takeaway. The other one is that idea of pattern breaks. I'm trying to sprinkle those in wherever I can and just say yes to more unique experiences. Even if it's not like taking a trip or doing anything like that, just say yes to the hike, say yes to the snowboard trip, say yes to going to a cycle class, like whatever the thing is, has been very helpful for me this year. Another one is that people are the best thing in the best times. They're also the best thing in the worst times. When you're celebrating your your victories and things are rolling and things are amazing and you're in one of those golden chapters, like it's people that make that awesome. It's the experiences you're having with people. It's the fun that you're having, the stories that you're making. Like, yeah, sure, you can go to the thing, but if your people aren't there, it's not nearly as fun. So, that is true. And in the worst of times, like having people to lean on and having people to bounce things off of and like to feel loved by is so huge. And so if you're going to invest in anything, at least for me, my takeaway this year is that I very much need to invest in my people, because there are times where I feel so good to be able to give to them and to see them succeed and see them win and just like give them all the love I can. There's been a couple of times this year where I've needed to ask for some love from them too. And it's been very rewarding to feel like I've been in a spot where it's okay to ask for that. And they've really shown up for me in a lot of amazing ways. So that's a big one. I'm going to give a shout out to a couple of you fuckers, actually. Yeah, mom and dad, you guys are awesome. I know not everybody has the privilege of A, having their mom and dad in their lives, but B, being close enough to get advice from them. And so like, thank you guys so much for showing up to me. Tanner, you're the man. I'm so glad to be getting closer with you and being a part of your journey, man. It's been one of the biggest treats ever. Hunter, thank you so much for being one of the best friends I've ever had in the short time I've known you. Brady and Drew, enough said, man. You guys are awesome. Christian has been amazing. One of the coolest dudes I know. Kobe, thank you for doing your thing, being there for me, even from, the island in Belize. Caden, one of the coolest things that's happened to me is living with you, brother. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Everybody in my business, thank you for showing up for me in ways that I didn't know that I needed, both when times were good and when times were hard. Your guys' perseverance is huge. It's amazing. All of the people who have shown me love this year, thank you guys for that. It's, again, the top 5 or the 4 out of the top 5 things that matter to me are very people related. So very appreciative of that. Summer, can't forget you. You have been my rock in so many ways. And you're the coolest. I owe a lot of the good outcomes that I have to you. And I hope to be a good beacon of the light that you put into the world. Townsley, dude, fireside chats, whiskey, and freaking cigars, man, have taught me more than I thought that I could get out of that. And you were one of the coolest mentors that I've ever had. I look up to you a lot. Lane, same thing, man. You're the coolest. Everybody in the Grindhouse family, they're in the best of times and the worst of times, and we're going to kick the shit out of each other either way. And a lot of times it's exactly what I need. Will, I look up to you so much, man. And I know that you've had your chapters this year too. But it's an honor to be your friend and to have you as a mentor. Yeah, man. I know I'm going to listen back to this and have forgotten a couple, and I'm going to kick myself for it, but it's a good start, man. I'm so blessed for the people that I have in my life and for the ways that they show up to me. One of the other little hacks that I've had so far is I've really, if I am thinking about somebody, obviously many of those people are on the list. I'll shoot them a text when I'm thinking about them, even if it's just as short as like me driving and like sending a voice note and being like, hey dude, just thinking about you. Hope you're doing good. Love you so much. Like, thankful for you being in the world. And that has sparked so many conversations and cool moments and just like gratitude. And it doesn't take hardly anything. So I think that's been very helpful and really huge. God dang it, Luke and Zoe, man, I almost forgot you guys, and Everett too. He won't listen to this, but Everett and Stevie, you guys fucking rock. You guys are my family here, dude. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being there for me again, in the good and the bad. You guys are the best when things are the best, and you're the best when things are the worst too. So anyways, I'll maybe if I forget any other ones, I'll put them in the show notes. But anyways, I think that's maybe a pretty good start. A couple of the other ones that I've got are don't let hard things be the only things you're working hard at. That's been a huge one, man. I'm going to keep coming back to that one, and I think I'll carry that one forever. Another one, know that hard times get a golden hue when they're in the rear view mirror. It's really hard to see when you're driving through the shit and it's making up seemingly everything when you're in the shit. But as soon as you look at those hard times in the rear view, a lot of times they start looking really sweet because you know how you grew from them and how your life got better. So that's a big one. Just know that as soon as it's in the rear view, it's going to start feeling a lot better. And then the last one, build your garden, man. Build your fucking garden. That came to me late last year, and it has been what I have pretty much built everything around this last year. It's just like build that garden and trust that the butterflies will show up. So that being said, that's what I've got, man. That was this year. Again, most impactful year of my life, certainly the hardest, but that's okay. There's been a lot of moments this year where I've been looking to the sky and just being like, man, can I just be developed enough already? Like, sure, I love personal development. I've got a fucking podcast that is trying to help people develop themselves and try to do all these things. But like, man, there's been a couple moments where I've just looked at the sky and been like, can I just be enough for a little while? Like, do we really have to do another lesson? Do we have to do another heartbreak? Do we have to do another thing right now? Can I just like a treat for being a good boy for a little while? And I guess I got one at the end of this year, so I'm glad that I took it in stride. But through all those moments and through this year, man, I can't help but think that I've been being prepared for something. It's been really hard, but I'm so proud, man, for the way that I've handled so many of the things that have been challenges. It's been really hard for me in the past to count my wins and even admit to being proud of myself ever. So, yeah, man, I'm proud of this year. I think that all of these lessons have got to be geared towards something. It's been a lot all at once for sure. And, this last reset of figuring out what matters, there's going to be some really exciting things coming this year that I'll kind of announce as they get closer. But I feel like I'm such a better person than I was this time last year. I have committed to becoming a better person through the personal development chapter and have continued doing that through this whole time. I have built a foundation in my business that is possible to build on and have got some really amazing people working with me. And I've taken the time over the last 2 months to figure out what matters and to continue asking myself that question as I navigate what I'm going to do about some of those things. And I can only imagine that all of these lessons that seem to be stacking on each other and lining up and like putting me in the right position are going to culminate to something really special. And so I'm really, really, really excited to figure out what that thing is. I'm excited to trust God and the universe and whatever's out there that they're going to be on my team in this thing. And that if I keep showing up as the best version of myself and keep learning to love myself in the process, that this thing can be a really beautiful journey, and that these chapters are going to stack up to be a really beautiful book at some point. So yeah, I'm just super excited for that, man. I am so grateful for this podcast, not only to be able to share some of these things with my family that, you know, I don't live close to, that might be able to hear this and kind of have a check-in. And I also think that it's going to be really cool to be able to have this platform and these check-ins and some of the guests and stuff that are upcoming to like be able to keep track of this journey as we go. It's one of the coolest things. One of the coolest things I've ever done. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that being said, I have dropped a couple of Easter eggs, I suppose, throughout this episode, and a couple of hints to some things that are to come. And if you have listened for 2 hours and 7 minutes at this point, you deserve to hear what's coming. So number one, I had some people sending me their Spotify raps and some different things on like just on my text and on my DMs and stuff like that over the last couple of weeks. And it has been so cool seeing some of the support that I didn't know that I even had. So, I'd imagine if you're listening this long, you're probably one of those people. So thank you for, supporting me, for showing up, for asking good questions, for being interested in awesome people, and for helping me build this community. Because again, man, it all comes back to people, and this show has brought the coolest people into my life that I'm just so grateful for. So thank you for that. And as a little treat, here's some of the things that are coming up for the show in the coming year. Number one, Chris Williamson said on Joe Rogan a handful of weeks ago that you can't really consider yourself as having a podcast or being a podcaster until about episode 150. This is obviously episode 30. And so that is the new mission, is to get to 150. And at the pacing of one podcast a week, that would take another essentially 2.5 years to get to. I don't want to wait that long. So one of the things that I'm going to be working towards is recording 2 episodes per week by the end of this upcoming year. And I think that will be possible through a combination of different things, but it'll be largely bringing in those remote podcasts and then having in-person ones as well. So I'm really excited to figure out how to make those as beneficial as possible and still have a great sense of connection and give people a great platform without being in person. So the road to 150 is starting now. The next thing actually came from Chris Williamson too. I got a chance to meet him when I was in Denver. And not only did I get a chance to thank him for being open about his entire journey and for paving a very unique path. Like I want to be one of the biggest podcasters in the world, and I want to be a writer. And he's done both of those things. And he's one of the very, very, very few people who have shown the entire journey along the way, both on his show and on some of his vlogs and some of his writing and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a very small pool of people that I can pull from as far as inspiration goes. So I was able to say thank you to him for that. And I was very excited. I was also able to ask him, I'm like, dude, I'm still in my first 150 episodes right now, and this is what I want to do. So how did you, in those 150 episodes, continue to keep doing the thing? Like, how did you stay motivated? How did you trust that it was going to work? How did you get through that muddy middle phase? And he said, honestly, dude, focus on the guests. If you can wake up on the mornings where you've got podcasts and go, fuck yeah, I get to talk to this person today at 1:00. It's like, that is the thing. Because if you can just focus on that, you're going to stay in love with it. You're going to have the most fun. You're going to be a great interviewer. You're going to do all of the things, and all of the complex stuff as that starts to come up. It's like, that'll sort itself out, but just focus on the guests and you'll be okay. So that's going to be a major focus this year, is both remote and in person, just getting as many phenomenal guests as I can and starting to set aside any insecurity that I have and just being willing to make the ask to people who I'm very interested by, see if they're down to have a conversation. So that's a big one. Already talked about remote guests a little bit. And then the last thing that, again, not too many people hear because not many listen this long, is this is one of the last episodes of this podcast will be called Press for Presence. There's a handful of reasons for that. One of them is a new term that I'm coining, the loud bar rule. And it's something that I've faced in my marketing company, and I'm facing it again now, which is, if you can't say the name of your thing to somebody in a loud bar where the music's loud and you kind of have to yell in somebody's ear, if you can't say it to them and have them remember it, it's a bad name. And even sometimes in coffee shops where there's no noise, I'll say Press for Presence to somebody and they'll be like, huh? They'll kind of give me that golden retriever head tilt, and it doesn't feel very good. So I did a lot of reflection about what the ethos behind and the idea and the message behind this podcast is. And while I think that idea of being pressed for presence resonates a lot with me, I think that the show is a bit bigger than that. And that idea that I want to try to be as present as possible throughout my journey, I think that the show has become bigger than that. And it's bigger than just encouraging people to be present. And I think what this show has actually become is, there's a lot of people on here who are very inspirational. And they're inspirational because they built their gardens. they had something that called to them. They figured out that that was the thing that mattered, and they set aside everything else to do that one thing. There's a saying that it's idiots all the way to the top. Most of your heroes and the people you look up to are people who gave a fuck about one thing at the cost of literally everything else in their life. And that's what they got good at. Think about athletes, think about musicians, think about whatever. That's it. And so what I find is that we have a lot of those people on the podcast. And what I want this show to be about, and what I want my message to be, and what I want to build this thing into, is to encourage people to answer that calling, to align their lives to what matters, and to build that garden. So that being said, this podcast will be rebranded in 2026 to be called The Garden. And we're going to got goosebumps talking about it. We're going to do some cool stuff around that. We'll do a little bit of a rebrand video to talk about what Press for Presence meant, to talk about kind of the shift that we're going into now. And then also just to talk about the main message behind that thing, to really lean into that story that's been so helpful for me to build that beautiful garden, and to encourage the people that listen to this show to focus on that thing, to do the thing that they're called to make hard decisions, to honor themselves, to honor their calling, and to enjoy the journey along the way as well. But I think that the more people that do that, like, I don't think that the world needs more people stuck in corporate jobs that they hate just because they feel like they need to pay their bills. I think the world needs more artists. I think it needs more writers. I think it needs more creatives. I think it needs more people willing to speak. I think it needs more love. And I think that the best version of this show encourages people to do that. So that's what we're going to call it. I'm very excited about it. I hope you guys enjoy it, and it's going to be really fun. So with that being said, this has been a whole lot of yapping for a solo podcast. Again, this is just me in a room with a handful of cameras. So there's a weird trance that happens just yapping for that long and not having any feedback. But I hope that this has been a good listen. Again, it's a format that I've never done before, kind of having a verbal journal entry about the last year that's happened. But I hope some of the stories have been helpful for you. And I hope that there were some takeaways in here outside of just the fact that I can talk at a camera for 2.5 hours. So that being said, thank you guys so much for this year. Thank you to everybody who's been on the show this year. This has been the coolest pursuit I've ever done. It's been the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I'm so excited to step more into this upcoming year and see what comes of it. So with that being said, super looking forward to 2026 and a year of a lot of fun things happening with the garden. So thank you guys for everything with 2025. Enjoy the holidays. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. I hope this time is full of love and reflection and love for yourself and pride in yourself and all of the stuff for everything that happened in your 2025. If there's anything that's been helpful for you, key takeaways, key stories, anything like that, I freaking love hearing all of that stuff. So if you feel called to reach out to me, either on my personal page or my podcast page, right now it's still called Press for Presence. So reach out there on the podcast page if you want to do that, or just at Drew Korf on my Instagram. If you have my number, text me or call me. So, yeah, this has been an awesome year. I hope it's been awesome for you too. Hope even the not so awesome parts have helped you get on the track to life being more awesome. And yeah, it feels a really good place to end it. So we're going to do that. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, be where your feet are. And thank you so much. I love you.